Whether you're building a new home or adding on, framing up the situation, or putting a roof over your head. If you need to rock it, roll it, or just get on with it, Hometime has a video to help you do it right. Transform your small bathroom into a luxurious master bath, or increase your home's value by updating your old kitchen. Keep your drains draining, your switches switching, and your footing firm. Whether you do it yourself or buy it yourself, Hometime's how-to video guides will help you get the results you want. Will make your next project a success. See your local home improvement retailer for the Hometime video that's right for you.
Hi, I'm Dean Johnson from Hometime. In this videotape, we'll take you through the steps of remodeling a bathroom. We'll show you some options that will work in several different situations, including yours.
Hometime is made possible by Chevy full-size pickup, the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickup on the road. The National PBS series Hometime is made possible by the Stanley Works. Since 1843, Stanley has been committed to building quality tools and other products to help you do things right. At Hometime, we believe the best way to get the job done is to use the finest tools.
And this Chevy full-size pickup is one of our favorites. Equipped with an optional Vortec 5700 V8 engine, it generates 255 horsepower and 330 foot-pounds of torque to power you through the toughest jobs.
And with the optional third door, you've got lots of room for all your other tools.
And friends to help you use them.
At home or on the job site.
For work or play,
it's no wonder we at Hometime count on Chevy full-size pickups.
The most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickups on the road.
Well, we're already into the beginning stages of the demolition on this bathroom project. We've taken off the millwork, and now we're removing the plumbing fixtures. Now, obviously, there's a lot that has to happen before you begin the actual construction. First, you need to work up a design. Then you need to line up your materials, hire any subcontractors, and be sure to get a building permit from your local building department.
We intentionally decided not to do a major remodel for this bathroom. That's because we think this is the type of project most do-it-yourselfers will end up undertaking. So when we pull out the tub, the toilet, and the sink, the new fixtures that we put back in will be going back in about the same spots. Now, one of the major things that we are doing is we're gonna take out this closet area, also move this wall a little bit further out into the hallway area to make the bathroom a little bit larger.
It's all sponged out.
Okay. Of course, what you do with your bathroom will depend on the space you're working with, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on the details of the framing for these walls.
During demolition, you may need to turn off the water to the house by closing the main shutoff valve. Then you need to drain out the water that's still sitting in the pipes. You do this by opening up the lowest faucet in the house and opening up the highest faucet in the house. That way, the water drains out through that low faucet.
Once the water is off, you can remove any shutoff valves or cut any pipes that you need to in order to do your demolition. Now, if you do cut any pipes, you need to cap them off before you can turn the water back on. We'll be doing more plumbing work later on, so we'll go through the details of sweating pipes and making other connections then.
During your demolition, you'll probably also be dealing with some electrical devices. Always test to make sure you've turned off the power before you touch anything. And if you're left with any wire ends exposed, make sure you cap them off with a wire nut before you turn the power back on. One of the most versatile tools for demolition is a reciprocating saw. Here, I'm using it to cut through the nails and screws that are holding in the door jambs.
By switching blades, you can also use a reciprocating saw to cut through wood studs and plates in order to remove entire walls. Sometimes the most sophisticated tool you'll need is just a heavy fist maul or sledgehammer.
Now, one thing when you're doing a bathroom like this, when you pull out the toilet and sink, you end up removing the traps. It has a little curved part the water sits in that keeps sewer gas from backing up into the house. So with these removed, I stuffed rags in there so we don't have to worry about the sewer gases getting in. I also taped up our heat register here so we don't have to worry about debris getting into the ductwork, and put a fan in the window so we can kind of get some of this dust and debris to blow outside.
Well, we're taking off the drywall from the bottom 4 feet of the wall. As you can see, we're taking off the tile and drywall together. That's because it's just about impossible to take the tile off without damaging the wall underneath. You can see here that the tiles come off pretty easy, but it leaves this adhesive behind. And if you try to scrape that off, well, it just ends up damaging the wall anyway. So if you're going to get rid of the tiles, then it's best just to yank everything and put up new drywall. If you're trying to remove tile on a floor, you may end up with a similar problem. Sometimes it's possible to chip away just the tile, but lots of times it makes more sense to break up the whole underlayment, which will probably be a thick bed of mortar.
Well, busting up a cast iron tub like this might look like a lot of fun, but I got to tell you, this is just quite a bit of work. But if you are getting rid of one of these, this is a way to go. Bust it up into small pieces and just haul it out. It's a lot easier than trying to muscle the whole thing out at once. Now, one thing you'll have to determine is how to get rid of all the debris. You could take it to the dump like we're doing, or if you just have a little bit, maybe your local trash pickup service will handle it for you. If you've got a lot, you probably have to rent a dumpster.
Well, one thing we decided not to do was remove the old floor. Older vinyl and asphalt floors might have asbestos in them. And so what we decided to do was take a piece of the floor and have it tested, and sure enough, it did have asbestos in it. Now, removing an old floor with asbestos is a little tricky, and getting an asbestos abatement contractor in to remove it is kind of expensive. So what we decided to do is put the new vinyl right on top of the old floor. That way we're not disturbing any of the asbestos, we're just sealing it up.
Well, it took the two of us the better part of the day to finish off the demolition. Now, I've only spent a couple of bucks so far for some caps for pipes, some wire nuts. We also got a roll of plastic to seal off the rest of the house. It's probably going to cost us about $50 to drop everything off at the dump, and it was $30 to get the floor tested for asbestos. Now, probably the number one thing you can do to keep a project like this from getting out of hand is to keep the plumbing fixtures in about the same spot. As soon as you start to move the tub, the toilet, or the sink, you could run into major problems rerouting pipes. Now, you may have to rip up the subfloor to do the rerouting, or go into the room below and start tearing out the ceiling. Now, the only thing we're going to do is move the sink, which was in this spot, over about 3 feet. Well, that's not that big a deal.
And what we've done is taken off the old stub out for the galvanized drain line that used to be here. Then we ran this horizontal drain line across. Okay, that is going to be 15.
Okay, so I had 1 3/8, 16 3/8.
Yep. Now we can measure and cut the vertical piece for the vent here. Then we'll attach that to this male adapter to connect the PVC with this galvanized.
Now, with PVC, you can cut this with a chop-saw, or a hacksaw works out pretty well, too. When you do get it cut, you should make sure you clean off any of the burrs before you make your connections.
To glue PVC, the first step is to use this cleaner on the two surfaces. Then we want to glue up both pieces with the cement. Okay, here we go. Okay. Put them together and give them a little twist and hold it.
Now we just want to take some Teflon tape and put that over the threads before we make our connection. Now we want to put this on clockwise so that when we screw our pipe into position, Teflon tape doesn't come off. And that should do it pretty well, just like that. All right, now to make our connection at the top between the PVC and the galvanized, we use that threaded connector. Down here, we're going to be using a no-hub connector. It has this rubber sleeve. Slide up over the connection between the PVC and the galvanized, and then there's this double clamp that I'll tighten down over the top of that.
We finished up the drain line, and now we're moving on to the supply lines. Now the drain line was pretty simple. All we did was extend that, but there are limitations to exactly what you can do there. Now we're working with 1.5" diameter pipe. That's 1.5" inside diameter. Now working with that size pipe, the maximum that we can go is 42 inches from our vent.
The vent pipes are, of course, the ones that go up. And the reason that you need these is to allow the waste to flow down the drain without sucking the water out of the traps in the various fixtures.
Now many times what you'll have is a main soil stack like the black one over here that will serve as both the drain and the vent. And if you have any vents tying into that, they have to tie in at a point that's above the highest drain in the house. It gets a little complicated.
Yeah, so even with the simple modification of the drain line, we did check with a couple of people to make sure we're doing everything according to code.
Now when it comes to the supply lines, this may look a little more complicated, but this is actually where you'll probably make fewer major mistakes. Now what I'm doing is extending the hot and cold water lines, and here's just a matter of common sense of coming up with the right number of elbows to have those end up in just the spot you want inside the cabinet. I just have to cut this last piece of copper pipe. Now this is 1/2" copper tubing type M, which is generally used for inside work. I'm using a tube cutter that I just gradually tighten down, spin around until it cuts it. Now I can clean off the tube. Use some emery cloths to do that and get the ends nice and clean. This gets any oxidation that might be on the pipes. For the inside of the fitting, I use a little wire brush to do that. Now once they're cleaned, then we flux the inside of the fitting as well as the tube. This flux is also sometimes called soldering paste. And once we have everything fluxed and clean, then what works best is to fit everything together. And once it's fit together, then we can sweat the joints. I want to just crimp this fitting ever so slightly to hold it in place. Okay, I'll put my last fitting on here, and we can fire up the torch. There we go. All right, let's see, what about here? Now when you're starting to heat your fittings, you want to make sure you're working with dry pipes. If there's any water in the pipes, it's going to make it pretty tough to get the fittings warm enough to where you can do your sweating. It takes a little time. Once you think the fitting might be warm enough, then you can give it a test. Now once it's hot enough, by holding the solder on the opposite side of the heat, it should draw that solder right into the fitting.
Oh, one other thing. We do still have the water on. Rather than shut it off for a long time, we'll just turn it off when we make the last few connections to the existing pipes. I'm just going to figure out the shower valve for tomorrow.
Okay. Well, this morning we're just about set to bring the tub up. Now, this is a cast iron tub, so we have a few people coming over to help lift it up there. Robin's just finishing up all the plumbing, so that's all set to go. I'm installing the drain overflow assembly. It's a lot easier to do it here than once it's installed up in the bathroom. Well, this is a drain tube. It hooks up to the drain, and the overflow assembly, get this gasket on here, has gaskets inside of this, so I can slide this down into the drain tube when we make our connection. Okay, tighten that thing. And then we take the lift rod assembly, and that slides down the overflow tube, and this is where we'll operate the drain.
When sweating connections with plastic or rubber parts in them, you want to make sure to take out the innards, like we did on the shower valve here.
That way you don't run the risk of the heat from the torch melting something, like we did on the shutoff valve down here. We didn't take out the innards before we sweated it. It leaked, we had to replace it. It's only a $5 part, no big deal, but this is a $130 valve for the tub and shower here. We want to make sure nothing happens to this. Right now I'm just putting it back together. It's a pressure balancing valve which keeps the water from getting too hot, which is what can happen if someone flushes the toilet or turns on the cold water in another part of the house. And nowadays, some kind of anti-scald protection is usually required by code. The other thing we want to do before the tub goes in is to make sure that our insulation and vapor barrier is all set in the exterior walls around the tub. I'll just jump on that before our tub lugger helpers arrive. But before we install the tub, let's review the standard layout for the supply lines for a tub shower unit. It's smart to put shutoffs on the incoming hot and cold lines. Now, these lines then come up and feed into the main valve. Coming down from the valve is a pipe ending in an eared, threaded L fitting, which is screwed into wood blocking at least 4 inches above the top of the tub. A threaded pipe will screw into the L for the tub spout. Another line rises up from the valve for the shower. This threaded eared L should be at least 72 inches above the floor.
1, 2, 3. Down. Nice.
Oh, beautiful. God. I had to cut away a little bit of the subfloor to make it easier to work under here. The old tub had this access panel, and we're just reusing it. You have to have one of these to get at the trap assembly underneath the tub. There we go. Not only to install it, but also to clean it down the road if you have to.
Now, this tub costs about $700. You can get a fairly decent cast iron tub for between $200 and $300. Now, the reason this one's a little bit more is it's a color other than white. It's called biscuit, which is a little bit warmer than white. It's also a little bit deeper and wider than your bottom of the line cast iron tub. Now, the timing of when to put the tub in is critical. If you're working with, let's say, a tub with one of those big surrounds or a shower stall, you probably want to put those in before you take care of this framing. Otherwise, they might not fit. But a tub like this should fit through pretty much any doorway.
Should do it. I had to shorten part of the trap to get everything to fit. This is the trap for the drain underneath the tub. This part hooks up to the drain line, and this part hooks up to the tailpiece coming down from the tub, and they both go together like that. Now, to prepare the drain line for the new tub, we had to cut back the old galvanized pipe and put on another no-hub connector like we did for the sink. Then we had to glue on an angled fitting and a trap adapter. Now, the piece of the trap just goes together with nuts and washers, so I don't have to do any more gluing.
Well, it's a real good idea to protect your tub once you've got it installed, especially given the fact we've got a pretty nice one here. But we added up the cost of all of our tubing and pipe and fittings. Everything came to about $50. Well, I have to admit, still working on doing some of this plumbing is a real mystery to people. I don't know how many bathrooms and kitchens I've done so far, and I still have to look long and hard at this stuff before I know exactly where to run the pipes and what size pipes and tubing to use. So don't be afraid to ask experts any questions you might have. Also, when you're at the home center deciding what you're going to be using, be sure to ask them quite a few questions too. Okay, that should do it. How's it coming back here?
Good. It's a tough position.
It is kind of a tight fit down there. There you go.
There is an option to completely replacing a tub. You can get a tub resurfaced for about $300.
Probably the most important part of the job is preparing the old surface. This contractor uses an acid to chemically etch it, and he completely sands it. Then he applies a bonding agent in the first coat, which is a primer. For the final resurfacing, he applies at least 3 layers of a special glaze coat finish. Once the final coat is dried, he'll remove the masking and re-caulk around the edge of the tub. Resurfaced tubs usually need a day or 2 to finish curing before they can be used. Most contractors who do this work are one-man franchises, so it's important to find out how long the contractor's been in business, what the guarantee is, and to get references.
Well, we've moved on to the electrical. Like the plumbing, the electrical is done in 2 stages. The rough-in is done while the walls are still open. That's what we're doing right now. And then in the final stages of construction, you attach the fixtures, the lights, the outlets, and the switches. Now, if you don't got your bathroom down to the studs, or if you're just partially gutting your bathroom like we've done here, then you're going to have to feed these cables up behind drywall or plaster. And the best way to do that is to use this stiff electrician's fish tape. And these cables are for one of the lights on the side of the mirror here.
What I'm doing up here is putting a termination cap on for our bath fan. Now, many codes say you don't have to put in a bath fan if you have a large enough window in the bathroom. But even with a window, we really recommend you go ahead and install one of these. The only thing you don't want to do is run that bath fan or terminate it in the attic space. All you're going to be doing is transferring your moisture problems from the bathroom up into the attic. You really do have to run it outside, and putting it on the roof like this is really the most common approach. Well, I have the termination cap nailed down. Now I just want to get the shingles situated so that they're overlapping the cap on the uphill side, but then the flange itself is laying on top of the shingles on the downhill side. This way, any water coming down will roll over the top of the shingles, down over the top of the flange here, and not get underneath the flange or any shingles. Okay, set it up.
All right. Well, all told, the electrical took us the better part of the day. We spent $55 on the recessed can. This exhaust fan cost about $200, but this is a really nice one. And then we spent about $140 on cables, boxes, and wire nuts.
Okay, I've got it secured. I'm going to get the duct up now.
All right.
I'm connecting the fan to our roof cap using this insulated duct. Now, the reason I'm using insulated duct is so that when the warm, moist air from the bathroom travels up through here, it doesn't cool down too fast. If it cools down too fast, that moist air could turn into water, run back down the duct, and then fall right back into the bathroom.
So, that's the last of the electrical work. Now we need to get the electrical, plumbing, and framing inspected so we can move on to the insulating and drywall. You done with this hammer?
Yeah, I'm finished with it.
We're putting down the plywood underlayment for our new vinyl floor. You can see that we're going right over the old asbestos floor tiles. Now, there's a lot of disagreement about how dangerous asbestos really is and what precautions are necessary when you remove it. But almost everybody seems to agree that when you can, the best thing to do is to leave it where it is and seal it up. We cut the 1/4-inch Luan plywood to the right size and shape, and then we're using a pneumatic stapler to attach it.
We're putting the staples every 2 inches along the edges of each piece and every 4 inches across the rest of the sheet. Now, this may seem like overkill on the staples, but it's necessary. Moisture from the adhesive that holds down the floor can sometimes cause the layers of the plywood to separate. Lots of staples will keep it together.
Once the plywood's down, we go back over the seams with floor leveling compound. It comes in a powder and you mix it with water. It fills in the joints between the sheets and it fills in any other imperfections in the plywood. The reason you do this is that any ridges or holes in the underlayment will show through onto the surface of the vinyl floor. They call it telegraphing. So you want the smoothest surface you can get. We're putting down a sheet vinyl flooring. The other type of vinyl flooring is vinyl tiles. In order to cut the vinyl accurately, we're making a template for it. We're using pieces of what's called scribing felt, and we're putting them up against the edges of the room and taping them together until we get one big piece. Scribing felt is a wide, stiff paper. Every so often you want to cut a little hole in the middle of the sheets and put some tape over it, just to hold the whole thing in place.
Have it taped up yet?
Just about.
Okay.
We're almost ready to cut the vinyl for the floor. We made this template, and we're taping it down to the vinyl through these little holes to make sure that the pattern falls where we want it.
Okay, I'm going to start cutting up here, I think, in this corner.
Great.
Now, when you go to cut this out, make sure you have a new blade in your knife. You also want to keep the blade perfectly vertical up and down. You don't want the blade leaning one way or the other, or you're not going to get a terribly accurate cutout in the process. Well, we have the vinyl exactly where we want it. Now, the only exposed edge we have is right here along the tub. Everything else will be covered up with ceramic tile base. That'll cover the edge here, so we have a little margin for error. Okay, now with everything in place, we're looking good along this edge. We've weighted down this side. Now we can just peel back this part of the floor, and this is the part that we'll glue down first. Slide back here. There we go.
The vinyl that we're using is called full spread, which means that the glue goes down over the whole floor. The other kind of vinyl is called perimeter bond, which means that the glue just goes down around the edges. And we're applying the adhesive with a notch trowel. The notches leave just the right amount of glue on the floor.
Okay, go ahead and spread this out. Now, if we haven't moved this around, this should pretty much flop right back into position. Now, the full spread isn't necessarily better than the perimeter bond or vice versa. Go ahead and select your vinyl based on pattern, pricing, and of course quality. Okay, now I just want to kind of spread this out. Okay, well, once we have this all spread out, then we'll go ahead and weight down this area, pull this side up, and glue this down.
All set?
Yep.
Okay, let's lift.
All right, well, with our walls done, we're able to start installing our cabinets.
We're going to be putting in 3 base cabinets. Many times in a basic bathroom, you'll have 1 cabinet. That'll be the vanity cabinet. And that's what we're starting with here.
Now, this vanity cabinet came with the back open, but in a lot of cases, you may have to drill holes in the back of the cabinet to fit over these pipes coming out of the wall.
And to make sure everything's level and plumb, we'll probably end up putting some shims underneath it here and along the back.
Yeah, I'm going to have to put shims back here, too. So.
Okay, all right. Let me start by putting one underneath here.
Here.
Definitely need one. Okay, let me take a look at that. Okay, just a little bit more. That looks fine. So does that. Now what I'm doing is sliding shims down right along the front of the studs, along the back of the cabinet, so when we attach this cabinet, we don't pull everything off kilter. Robin's going to pre-drill them so we can screw right through the rail into the studs. In fact, the cabinet came along with special screws to do exactly that. Oops.
That one's ready?
Okay. Okay.
Okay, well, we've got the other 2 cabinets in. One of them is this little base cabinet over here next to the vanity. And the other one is this tall linen cabinet. Now, something like this is really nice if you don't have a linen closet in the bathroom or right out in the hall.
Now, once you get beyond a couple of cabinets, you'll probably be dealing with filler strips. Now, what filler strips are finished pieces of lumber supplied by the cabinet company that match the cabinets. We have one right here in between our linen cabinet and the wall. It fills in the space. We also have another filler strip between this cabinet and our linen cabinet that, again, fills in this space. Now, the way we attach cabinet to cabinet and filler strip to cabinet is to screw into the sides. Okay, well, I might as well grab that countertop downstairs.
All right, I'll measure for this notch then. Anyway, installing these cabinets is about a day's worth of work. The total cost for all 3 cabinets is $1,300. But if all you're doing is a vanity, then you can get a pretty decent one, about this size, starting at around $300.
Our countertop is made of plastic laminate over a base of particle board. Now, you can buy these pre-made or have them custom made, or you can build them yourself from scratch. Now, the first thing is to glue and screw an extra strip of particle board to any exposed edges. This will make the countertop appear to be 1.5 inches thick.
You use contact cement to glue the laminate to the particle board. And with contact cement, you apply it to both surfaces and let it dry. The laminate can be cut into the approximate size with a special laminate scoring tool or a fine-tooth blade and a circular saw.
It might take 20 or 30 minutes to dry to the touch, depending on the temperature and humidity. Then you place the 2 pieces together and press them firmly in place with a small tool called a J-roller. You trim the laminate flush with the top of the particle board with a special flush cutting laminate bit in a router.
You always start on the edges, then apply the laminate to the top, and then build any backsplashes. For large areas, there's a special roller that you can use to apply contact cement.
Contact cement grips almost instantly, so we spread out thin pieces of old window blind to hold the surfaces apart until we've got the big piece of laminate positioned exactly where we want it. You can also use wooden dowels for this. Then we pull out the slats, starting at the center and working out to the ends, pushing the laminate down onto the particle board as we go.
Again, we've made the piece of laminate a little larger than we need, and we use the router to trim it off flush at the edge. The router bit has a wheel that runs along the surface. This makes sure that the bit cuts off the excess, but doesn't damage the finished edge that we've already attached.
To finish off the edges, use a special laminate file. This allows you to take off the sharp corner and to put a slight bevel on the edge.
Now, before installing the countertop, we need to secure these strips of pine. Now, this is called the buildup. It makes the countertop look thicker than it actually is.
How's that going for you?
Really good. I've just got this last one here. Okay.
Great. Can you help me out with this?
You bet. Here, I'll grab this.
Okay. Let me get my end up. Now, we cut a little notch out of the corner of this so it'll fit around the wall. And we do have a backsplash that will be running along the back and the side here, so it'll cover up any gaps along that. Okay. All right. Now I want to just screw through our corner blocks up into the countertop. So if we can hold this down. Let's see, where's that corner block?
Here. All right, you want to look down there and see how straight that is?
Okay.
How about that?
That's pretty good right about there.
Okay, I'll clamp it down. Well, this is the first piece of backsplash that we're going to install. This is where we have to have a really tight joint to the wall. Now, the wall is not absolutely perfectly straight, so we're going to scribe the backsplash to fit the wall.
Now, when we say we're scribing, what we're doing is we're taking a compass and a pencil, and we're basically transferring the contour of the wall to the top of the backsplash. Okay, then we can remove the backsplash, and using a belt sander, we can take this right down to the line. Now, this has a real thin area of buildup in this area, so it makes it a lot easier to use the belt sander to take it down to that point. Okay. Okay, it's all set.
And we scribed it so it fits good against the wall. Next, we're installing it by gluing it to the wall and the countertop with silicone adhesive.
Now, once the backsplash is in position,
You want to use some shims in between the backsplash and these cleats that we screwed up on the wall to make sure it's tight against the countertop. And then we'll use these braces to make sure that it's tight up against the wall. There. Yeah, that looks pretty good. We have all the drywall finished in here. Now we're putting up our concrete backer board around the tub. It's the best stuff to use behind ceramic tile. Now what this material is a 1/2-inch piece of concrete with fiberglass mesh on either side. Now to cut this stuff, you use a special blade with a carbide tip on them. You just score it. And it's like working with drywall. Once you have it scored, you snap it. And then using a razor knife, I just cut up the back of the rest of the fiberglass. Okay. As I mentioned, just like drywall. Set that over there. And I could use a quick hand to get this thing up there. You got it there?
Got it.
Okay, now to secure this, we'll be using 1 3/4 galvanized roofing nails. Okay, that's a spot right there.
Okay. You place the nails every 6 to 8 inches along each stud. And then when you're all done, you go back and reinforce the joints with thin-set mortar and fiberglass tape. A thin-set is a special mortar that's used for setting tile, usually floor tile. It comes in a powder form, and you mix it to the consistency of, mud. Then you push it into the joint with a 6-inch drywall taping knife. Then you push the fiberglass tape into the mortar. So, there we go. And then we use our taping knife to embed it. Now the backer board costs about $13 or $14 for a 3x5 sheet. And then expect to pay another $15 or $20 for mortar and tape.
Now probably the #1 mistake that do-it-yourselfers make is they don't prepare the framing. This backer board will not flatten out a crooked wall. So if you have any undulations in the framing, you want to use these little felt furring strips to help straighten everything out. Otherwise it's going to end up looking like sloppy tile work. Okay, let me find it. All right, well, we're onto the tile. We're starting with the tub surround. Now, there's 3 different types of tub configurations that you might be working with. This is the alcove or the recess. It's the most common. Now, there's also the drop-in or the freestanding. Okay, I'm all set for those. Now, an alcove like this, many times it will also double as a shower tub combination, in which case you need all 3 walls covered. And ceramic tile is the most common material to do this with. Now the way this works is the adhesive is fairly sticky and the tiles don't weigh that much, so we simply press the adhesive or the tiles onto the adhesive and they pretty much just hang on the side of the wall. Now we're using 6x6 tiles. 4x4 tiles are also a real common size to use in a bath surround like this. Now the way the spacing works, I don't know if you can see this or not, but there's little lugs on the edge of the tile. What I do is place one tile up against the next, and those little lugs perform the spacing function for us. So we don't have to worry about keeping the tiles apart a certain distance. You can see the spacing ends up being really uniform. Get these things in exactly the right spot. Now once we get all the full tiles laid up in a section, we'll go back and measure for the ones that we have to cut. Okay, it looks like 3 1/8 ought to work.
Okay.
Once you do have a section like this laid up, go back and wipe off any excess adhesive. Now's a real good time to catch it. Also, if you have any adhesive in the cracks, pull that out with a
with a utility knife. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get grout in those areas.
A lot of your cuts can be made on a snapper like this. It's got a little wheel that runs along the surface and scores a line in the top. And then this little lever just snaps the tile apart. There we go. Now, even though the cuts are pretty clean, it's a good idea to use a rub stone to smooth it out. There you go.
Whenever you're dealing with cut tile, you want to make sure that the cut side of the tile is up against the wall, not up against the side of the finished tile that you laid previous to that. There you go.
Rinse that out for you. With a tub surround, you always want to start with the back wall and then do the sides. That way the joints in the corners look better. Now, as you can see, we've created an interesting pattern here in the middle using some different types of tile. These thin black ones are sometimes called liners, and then we put these 2-inch square tiles in the middle.
Okay, I'm going to need about 6 more bullnose across the top here.
Okay, I'll go get those in a second.
All right.
An inexpensive tool for curve cuts in tile is a rod saw. It's an abrasive cutter that you can put into a hacksaw frame.
Tile nippers are special cutters that take little bites out of the tile. Use them for rough curves or to break off narrow pieces after scoring them with the snapper. A tub saw has a circular blade that's cleaned and cooled with water. Professional tile setters use these for lots of cuts. You can rent them starting at about $35 a day. Once you're done setting tile, you need to apply grout to the joints. Grout for wall tile is usually pretty fine since the joints between wall tile are usually thin. You use this padded float to push it around the surface and push it down into the joints. Once you've got an area done, you hold the float at about a 90-degree angle to the wall and scrape off the surface. Make sure you scrape diagonally across the tiles so that the edge of the float doesn't dig into the joints. Then wipe it with a damp sponge. Clean off the excess grout and shape the grout in the joints. You want to be rinsing out your sponge pretty often so that you're not leaving much residue on the surface. The final wipe should be with a freshly rinsed sponge. One wipe, turn it over, one more wipe, then rinse it again. This tile project cost about $300, including materials and tool rental, and took about 3 days. An alternative to a tile tub surround is one made of plastic or fiberglass. Here's the steps to installing one of those.
Most surrounds come in 3 or 5 pieces. The first job is cutting holes in the piece that goes over the wall with the plumbing. Well, the best way to do this is to make a template out of cardboard.
Okay.
Depending on the size of the openings you need, you can use a hole saw or a jigsaw. Use one of the adhesives recommended by the manufacturer. For this brand, we spread the adhesive out with a notched trowel just like you do with vinyl flooring or ceramic tile. It's also a good idea to put caulk along the edge of the tub before you set the panels in. For this brand, the panels for the plumbing wall and the head wall go in first. Then you trim the center panel to fit between them. On some kits, the panels will merely overlap at the corners. This brand, though, has an interlocking corner that seems like it should be pretty watertight. Nonetheless, it's recommended that you put caulk into the channel before installing the back
All right,
panel.
let me pop this out. Let's pull it up toward me a little bit.
It's a good idea to brace the panels in place overnight while the adhesive cures. Once it's dry, we'll go back and caulk the joint between the tub and the panels.
Well, the next thing we're going to do is put in the sink, or the lavatory as they call it. Now, we want to start by doing the cutout for the sink based on the template that comes in the box with the sink. Now, first I want to get this board on, though, so that we don't have to worry about the cutout dropping or binding once we finish the cut. Now, the faucet and drain assembly comes in about 10 different little packages, which is fairly typical. Now, that includes the spout, the valves, the supply tube between the valves and the spout, as well as a drain assembly. Now, the particular faucet we're working with is a wide set faucet. The other type is the center set. Now, the center set is one where everything's in one piece and requires a sink with 3 different holes, and the holes have to be spaced 4 inches apart. With a widespread like this, the holes many times are 8 inches apart, or in the case of this faucet, it can be adjustable. None of this is connected here, so these holes really could be anywhere on the sink. So obviously you have to coordinate what's going on with the faucet, your sink, and your countertop. Well, for instance, on this particular sink, this comes in 3 different configurations. One where the holes are 8 inches apart, another one where they're 4 inches apart, and then another one where it's a single hole, because many times a faucet only requires a single hole. What I've done so far is to put the spout and valves into their respective holes. And just what this involves really differs from one brand to the next, so you really need to read the instructions that come with it so you'll know how to keep the washers and nuts and gaskets all straight and where they should be going. Now I want to connect the tube from our valves over to our spout. Now well, first what I want to do is get some pipe dope on here to lubricate everything up just a little bit. Once I get that on, then this tube just kind of screws into our valve, and then we'll go from there over to the threaded posts on our T.
Say, can you do me a favor and hand me one of those shut-off valves?
Sure. I can take off the collar here for you.
Thanks. Now, the water of the house is shut off, and I cut the caps off the ends of these copper pipes coming out of the wall.
Here you go.
Great, thanks. Now, the first thing I want to do is install the shut-off valve, and then I can turn the water back on. The valve is a compression fitting. The collar goes on first, and then this little brass ring, and then the valve. And then everything gets tightened down. Now, the pipe coming out of the wall has got an inside diameter of a ½ inch. So you want to make sure to get the right size valve. Now, usually, the pipe going to the sink is a 3/8 inch diameter on the outside. And with a compression fitting, the ring gets tightened down into the copper pipe, which creates a watertight seal. Okay, I'm ready for the next one.
Oh, okay. There you go. Well, we moved on to the drain assembly. Now, this is the flange. A little bit of plumber's putty around the outside. Now, this fits into the drain hole in the sink. I take my drain tailpiece and I screw that into the bottom of the flange. I want to get that as tight as possible. Okay, there we go. Now, once that is fairly tight, then I want to really secure everything, and I do that by spinning this lock nut. And I keep on doing that till it's really secure.
Okay, I'm all set here. Put this adhesive down if you're just about finished.
Okay, just about set. Now, the last thing on our drain assembly is the stopper. We want to take this collar and screw this into the hole in the side of our drain tailpiece. Now, it's kind of tricky in connecting the handle, which I'm sliding through the top of the spout, and our lever. Now, what we want to accomplish here is we want this handle to move freely. We want the stopper to move all the way up and all the way down. So we'll start with it in the 4th hole and see how that works. Let's see. Not exactly perfect. Let's move it up the 3rd hole, see how that works. This thing attached. Okay, we're in complete down position. About there. Tighten it down. Okay, yeah, that seems to be working pretty good. All right, now last thing I want to do is hook up these supply tubes to our valves. Get a little pipe dope on here. It's a lot easier doing it now than once the sink is in place.
Well, we're just about ready to set the sink into the countertop. I put a couple of small beads of silicone adhesive around the edge of the opening. And the rim of the sink will sit right on top of that and glue it into place.
Okay, all set?
Yep.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay, well, we didn't cut the hole too big. That's good.
Hooking up these flexible supply tubes is fairly straightforward. You just want to tighten them just a little bit past hand tighten. There we go.
For the drain connections, you need to have a trap. That's what this is. One end of it slides onto the drain tailpiece coming down from the sink. Like that?
Yeah.
For the tailpiece, you can shorten it by cutting it, or you can lengthen it by replacing it or adding an extension to it. The layout for our sink and pipes meant that we had to lengthen the tailpiece and shorten the trap. There we go.
Okay, I'll take the trap and slide it up the tailpiece and get it at approximately the right height. Take the other part of the trap and slide that into the pipe that we originally roughed in to the wall here. Now this had a threaded trap adapter that we glued onto it, and this is how we'll make the connection of the trap to the wall. We'll leave that a little loose, and we'll swivel our pivoting joint on the trap over, get those on top of each other where they should go. This gives us, the swivel here gives us a little bit of flexibility on lining everything up. Now the trap and the tailpiece and even the trap adapter can all be white PVC like we've got here, or black ABS, plastic or chrome. This PVC is probably going to be the easiest to work with and also your least expensive alternative. Okay, let's give that a try.
When you turn on a new faucet for the first time, take the screen off the end of the spout and let the water run for a couple of minutes. This is to flush out any debris in the lines.
Okay, the water's on.
Okay. There you go. How's it going?
Looks pretty good. Don't see anything leaking.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
A laminate countertop with a self-rimming sink is just one of several options you have for a bathroom sink. A very common choice is to go with a cultured marble countertop with an integral bowl. When you install one of these, you attach the faucet and the drain assembly first. Usually it just takes a couple of dabs of silicone adhesive to hold these in place to the top of the vanity cabinet. Cultured marble tops come in a variety of shapes, sizes, and colors. They're molded from a plaster-type material and finished with a hard glaze, although this one has a nice matte finish. The cost for this size and style is about $300, but other styles in this size start at about $150. Now, it's difficult to shape a cultured marble top to fit the surrounding walls. Usually you just run a bead of caulk around the edges.
Another option for the sink in the bathroom is to install a pedestal sink. A pedestal sink is partially supported by a pedestal that sits on the floor, but it's also partially supported with a bracket or double-sided bolts on the wall. So it's helpful to install wooden blocking in the wall behind the sink early in the construction. This way, there will be something solid to secure the bracket or the bolts into. Since the plumbing connections for a pedestal sink are visible, we try to use attractive fittings.
brass or chrome-plated shutoff valves, supply lines, and trap. A metal trap assembly will usually include an escutcheon to cover where the drain pipe comes out of the wall.
Well, we're coming into the home stretch. We've got the toilet left, a few light fixtures, some odds and ends, and then we're done. Now you can see that we've got the medicine cabinet in. It's a surface mount cabinet. Now, if you decide to go with a recessed one that fits into the wall, then you're going to have to put an opening in the framing like you would a window. And that's kind of hard to do. Anyway, we decided it wasn't worth it.
Now to install the toilet, I put the flange bolts on the flange already, and I'm putting a wax ring over the horn. Set this thing on the top and then press it in real well so I can flip the toilet right side up. We're all ready for installation. Okay.
Here, I'll get out of the way. Need any help with that?
No, I got it. That's fine.
Okay, now that I have this over the flange bolts, I want to put some weight on it. You don't want to rock it back and forth. You just want to
Get everything sealed in and check for level.
And sometimes people attach the incoming power cable directly to the light fixture using a cable connector. But we've been told it's best to use a junction box. So I'm just pulling the leads through the hole, and then I'll screw the plate to the junction box using these screws, and then I'll screw it down to our wooden box.
Okay, and now that everything's level, I can go ahead and put the nuts on the flange bolts. All right, so first we get this little guy down, then the washer, and our nut over the top. Hand tighten this down a little ways, get everything all kind of lined up on top. You want to be real careful with this. You can over tighten these and end up cracking the toilet, so easy does it. That should do it.
Well, I wrapped the ground wire around a screw on the back plate. Right now I'm just hooking up the hot wires coming out of the fixture with the hot wires coming out of the wall. That's the black wires, and then I'll do the same thing with the white wires, which are the neutral wires. There we go.
Okay, we're ready to attach the tank now to the top of the bowl. This black gasket is the thing that will provide the watertight seal between the tank and the bowl. The way we'll attach this is with these 3 bolts coming out the bottom of the tank. This gives me a throb. So I'll set this on top of the toilet, and we'll screw it right down through. Those lined up. And again, this is another one of these things you don't want to tighten down too hard. Get this thing attached. There we go.
Okay, now that all the connections are made, just get these wires out of the way, and then put this front plate back on. This out. There we go. And that's held in place by these collar nuts. There we go. Right now I'm wiring up the outlets and switches. Building codes say that any outlet adjacent to the sink must be a ground fault circuit interrupt outlet, and they call it a GFCI. You'll find these in areas of the home where there's moisture. A GFCI gives you extra protection against shock. Now, these are wired up in a very specific way. The incoming power gets connected to the line terminals. That's these right here, it's marked line. And then there's these load terminals. Anything that gets hooked up to that also gets GFCI protection. So I'm hooking up the cable that goes to the outlet on the other side of the sink to the load side. Tricky. Get that back in there. Oh, there we go. As a final touch for your bathroom, you'll need to apply caulk in several places. Between the floor and the toilet, between the floor and the tub, and between the tub and the tile. Use masking tape to keep excess caulk off the finished surfaces as you smooth the caulk down.
Silicone sealant works well to glue accessories to tile and to wallboard. You can use thick double-stick tape on the back to hold them in place while the silicone sets up, or you can use masking tape on the front.
Okay, I got the new supply light on. Now we can test it out.
Well, this is the GFCI installed. You need to test these once a month. That's what these two little buttons are for. Test and reset. You can see that these lights are hooked up to the GFCI. The lighting above the sink is pretty important. Most people tend to agree that what you need is a soft, even incandescent light around the mirror. You don't want a fluorescent light because the color can be misleading, and you don't want a recessed light above the sink because that can cast a shadow over your face. What you need is either a light bar or group of lights on either side of the mirror or above the mirror.
All right, well, we have the exhaust fan installed. It's a real quiet one. It operates at 1.5 sones. I'll turn it on so you can hear it. Now, this is a little pilot light on the switch so you can see it whether it's on or off. Now, it also has an overhead light and a night light, which operates at 5 watts. Now, another thing you want to be concerned about fans is how much air they can move. You want a fan that can turn over the air in this space 8 times per hour. Now, this one operates at 110 cubic feet per minute, so that means it can turn over the air in this space about 12 times per hour, which is pretty good.
Well, that's about it. Obviously, what we've done in here isn't going to answer all your questions about bathroom remodeling, but hopefully we've given you some good basics and some good design ideas.
And we'll keep doing a variety of projects so you can learn what works and what doesn't work right along with us. Thanks for watching.
See you next time.
Hometime is made possible by Chevy full-size pickup, the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickup on the road. The National PBS series Hometime is made possible by the Stanley Works. Since 1843, Stanley has been committed to building quality tools and other products to help you do things right.